Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the week of April 14th through the 20th. I cannot even believe we are halfway through April already. Where is the time gone? Okay, so we are still in Aries season. It's a fixed fire sign. We just had a full moon in Libra yesterday, which I was very suspicious of it just because it was a Chiron Cazimi and Mars and Cancer was squaring off that moon. So I was like, how is this going to manifest? But I think if you've done the work in the last 18 months or even more than that, I feel like this was such a beautifully cathartic, healing moon. I don't know. That's how I felt about it. I felt very ready to close old chapters, to end karmic cycles, to say goodbye to the old parts of myself, old relationships, old contracts. Because this is Libra, it's about having fairness, justice, and just really ready to move on. And I know a lot of people have felt stuck in the last couple months where you might have felt like things weren't moving forward. And a lot of my clients have felt that way. And so I just want to say that I have also felt the same way. And I realized that that was the point. Feeling stuck and nothing moving forward was actually the universe saying, we need to pause because we are co-creating all the time. We are manifesting all the time, but we are oftentimes moving at a pace that is unsustainable for conscious co-creation. And also, as my friend Stephanie Campos says, retrogrades are the antidote to capitalism. So the whole point was to be still, to sit with, and actually feel the feelings and be honest with yourself. Because oftentimes when we are in survival mode or we're in a rush, it's a fight or flight response. We just react to things, constantly reacting to things, right? And sometimes our minds are so powerful that we talk ourselves out of certain things and we ignore our intuition. We ignore our body cues. And as somebody who has ignored body cues many times in the past, because I've overridden what I feel intuitively because I want to give people the benefit of the doubt or I make excuses. I've learned in the last 18 months to listen to my body, listen to how I'm really feeling about things. And this could be so simple as just checking in with yourself and asking yourself, why do I want this thing? Why do I want to do this thing? Where is the motivation really coming from? Why do I want these things that I think I do? And the greatest example that's coming out recently is on this full moon, Venus stationing to go direct, because when retrograde planets start to station, they change directions. Is China spilling the tea on luxury brands? I mean, I thought this was something that everybody knew just because, like, in the 90s and the 2000s, my mom and I would go shopping in Chinatown in the city, and we would buy the knockoff, which now they're not knockoff. We would buy the knockoff handbags, and the Chinese women would be like, these bags are made in the same factory as Balenciaga, as Chanel, as Gucci. And I actually have a bag that is, I guess you would say, a knockoff because I didn't buy it from a Balenciaga store. I bought it in Chinatown that looks exactly like a Balenciaga bag. And now it's like 80% of luxury good brands are made in China and then they ship it to Europe and then they put the label on there, made in France, made in Italy. And so I think this is really interesting in terms of unveiling what value really is, right? It's a Venus ruled thing. Value is just something a brand slaps on And because people are invested in that brand and the luxury that people buy into, like people who buy $100 Lululemon leggings that are actually $5 in China, you buy into the Lululemon brand, which is skinny white girls who do yoga, who probably aren't even practicing the actual yoga that is from the lineage, but more of a whitewashed, new agey version of yoga. And because Lululemon, Gucci, Chanel, it gives you a certain status symbol that's what people buy into. That's what people, it's an illusion, right? And I think it's so interesting because China, and I'm not saying China is good either. Please don't get me wrong, because I just believe all of these countries are corrupt in some way, but because the US's tariffs on Chinese goods, now China is spilling the tea on like what luxury brands really is just so interesting in the context of Venus, which is all about values. And I just want to remind you too, since this is Aries season, we just had a full moon in Libra, that when you're going through your spiritual journey of really understanding what it is that you're doing here, what is this whole why did we choose this timeline, to always remember that no one is going to save you. There's no politician, no Bernie Sanders, no AOC, no Donald Trump, no Obama even. None of them are saving us. It's all in here. The power is within you. It is loaded and coded within each and every one of us, but we've forgotten that. So we give our power away. We give our power away because we think in this capitalistic system that earning a lot of money and having a well-paying job and doing the things that the state wants us to do, which is as a woman, get married and have kids, is what our value is derived from. Look at your second house. Sorry, I'm getting really passionate. Look at your second house. Do you have planets in the second house? What is your second house ruler? Where is that? What sign? What aspects is it making? Because it tells you a lot about how you value yourself, how you see yourself, and all of your personal resources, which, yes, in a capitalistic system is money. And also, I want to remind you, it's your skills and talents, the natural ones that you were born with, that nobody can take away from you. So I do think it's interesting that people get really excited about, celebrities and, the Democrats, Bernie Sanders and AOC. And it's like the USA is built on this celebrity worship culture, which is just so weird, and the saviorism, right? But again, no one is going to save us in this system. The only people that we can rely on is to turn our attention towards each other, because we are stronger together. There's way more of us than there are of them. There's way more people who care about humanity, who want this world to be a better place, and who's doing the work individually. And we have to remember that everybody, yes, everybody, even the racist people, even the Trump supporters, even the Zionists, they are also a part of collective liberation. I might not want to engage with them ever, like they are on their own in terms of like their own journey, but collective liberation means everybody. And we also have to remember that it's all from within. It's here. So to remember that, you have to literally like sit with your shit and feel. Why do you want that job? Why do you want to get married? Why do you want to have kids? Why do you want anything? And there's no judgment. If you really want these things, you have to ask yourself, where is it coming from? What is the root? What is the intention? Because all manifestation is having an intention and an emotion, a conviction behind it, a belief behind it. So I'm not saying like you can't want the things that you want or desire the things that you desire, but it's really about being intentional about things now and knowing that sometimes the things that you desire are causing harm to others. And this is why I try to live a BDS life as much as possible. BDS stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. I think it's great that I think music and art is so important to revolution. I believe that our power is in our joy, but we also have to be mindful of the places that we give our money to, the corporations we give our money to, and the people that we choose to spend time with. So, right, this weekend is Coachella, right? And it's just interesting seeing people who paid money, like lots of money, to camp in tents and complaining about it. But then on the other hand, you see displaced families in Gaza who don't have food, right? Because the Rafah border has been closed since last year, since last May. They don't have access to showers at all. They have to share one toilet with like 100 people, maybe even more. They're under constant bombardment of drones, and they literally could be bombed at any moment. So it's just like that juxtaposition this in this moment of like really like Libra, the scales. I was just observing everything that was coming out during the full moon in Libra. And again, I'm not saying that you can't enjoy yourself, enjoy music, enjoy art, but it's also your intention around that, right? Are you just escaping reality and pretending like nothing is happening? How are your actions causing harm to others? And just those kinds of things is the energy of this full moon in Libra, square to Mars in Cancer, and the Chiron Kazemi in Aries. And I see that a lot playing out in the collective. I think a lot of people are waking up to the lies of capitalism and that no one's going to save you. And if they can bomb the children abroad and if they can continue to have school shootings, then they will come after your children next. And, a lot of people in my comments section, my aunties are always saying, like, you have to be careful, you have to stay safe, try not to speak out so much, stop wearing a keffiyeh. And my whole thing is I would be safer if more people spoke up, if more people stood in solidarity. Because for me, Palestine is a reproductive issue, it's a feminist issue, it's a healthcare issue, it's a climate issue. And so it just so happens that Palestine is the thread that is pulling all of these things out and unveiling US military occupations around the world and the climate crisis and just all of these issues at once. So my solidarity for Palestine is the solidarity for my indigenous people in Korea, for the indigenous people of Turtle Island, Black people, for Sudan, for Congo, for Syria, for everywhere. Um, so that was my very Libra stellium rant at the beginning of this video. But I just think it's so important too that astrologers who recognize patterns, who are observing the celestial movements that correlate to mundane events on Earth, I think it's so important to speak of the times because we are literally using the study of time and cycles, astrology. And for me, astrology is it's a social science. You observe behavior, you observe patterns, and then you can break the patterns, you can move accordingly with the celestial weather. And to not use this art for that purpose, to me, I'm like, it's like that meme, like, what are y'all praying for if not the end of empires? Like, literally, every morning, I pray for the safety and security of all sentient beings on Earth. And so that is my Libra full moon spiel. I'm sure there's going to be so many more recap events that happened in the last week, which we will be sure to cover them during the monthly forecast with Stephanie Campos. But let's get started on the week. So, like I mentioned, there was a full moon in the sign of Libra on April 12th. And so We start this week off with the waning phase of the moon, with the Scorpio moon. So feelings can be deep. You might be in your feels. You might be like, okay, we ended eclipse season. We are officially ending that 2 year, 18-month cycle of the Aries Libra eclipses. Planets are starting to go direct, right? So Mars went direct sometime in February. Mercury went direct last week. Now Venus is direct. So, like I mentioned, a lot of people have felt stuck for the last couple months. It's because we're in the same energy as we were back in December. So, the biggest and most consequential, I would say, transit of this week would probably be that Mars is finally going back into Leo. Like, I think this is the moment that we've all been waiting for because Mars in Cancer has just felt so heavy and so blah. Like, just with all the Pisces energy and Mars in Cancer, just felt like so much grieving and sadness and just in our feels, right? Just like meh. And so fire signs and air signs placements rejoice because anytime a planet ingresses into a fire sign, this is like what gives us life, right? And I say that as a double fire sign and an Aquarius moon. So April 14th, we have a Scorpio moon. And I think this is interesting because there will be the first flight into space with an all-woman crew since 1963. And I actually have to look at the astrology of 1963. I didn't do that. But this is Blue Origin's flight, which is about 11 minutes from West Texas. And Blue Origin is owned by Jeff Bezos. And so his fiance, Lauren Sanchez, Gail King, Katy Perry, and there's two astronauts that are pretty well known who are also aboard. I believe her name is Amanda. She's a Vietnamese woman. Why can't I remember her name? Damn it. And another, I think she's an astrophysicist. Aisha Brown, is that her name? But I think this is interesting. So Neptune ingress into the sign of Aries at the end of March, March 30th. And so Aries is the sign of the first. And I have said since last year that for me, Neptune is also the planet of space and the ocean. I know like people usually associate Neptune with the ocean because Neptune is the Roman god of the sea. But I find that also things having to do with like exploring places that they don't know of, like the unknown, is also a Neptunian thing. So I do think it's interesting that the first flight into space with an all-woman crew since 1963 is happening after Neptune's ingress into the sign of Aries. I was kind of feeling like, is this a good astrology day to do this? Um, if you've watched interviews with Gail King, she does seem nervous. She does seem like she has some intuitive sense that something could go wrong. And then there's questions of what's the point of this? It's an 11-minute flight. It is very costly. And they could be using that money. Jeff Bezos can be using that money to do like other things, right? Um, I just don't like Jeff Bezos, so I'm very biased. I'm just like, ugh, like anything he does, I'm just like, ugh. He can literally give away half of his money, half of his net worth, and still be one of the richest men on this planet. Like, yuck. But I do think it's significant that with an all women crew, this is very Aries coded, very first. Amanda, who is the Vietnamese, she is the Vietnamese astronaut. She studied to be a NASA astronaut, but then she got raped in, I think she went to Harvard. So she had to quit school and she lobbied at Congress to, I think, pass a bill about extending the expiration date on rape kits. Look up her story. It's very fascinating. and her parents were refugees from Vietnam. So I feel like that's like a first thing, you know, very Neptune, very dreamy, very disillusion of boundaries and what's possible for humanity, right? And Neptune being in Aries and then Uranus moving into Gemini later this year, it does kind of give this signature around like space travel being more accessible to like the regular Joe Schmo, right? Not saying that Gayle King or Katy Perry are just regular people because they're very wealthy, but they're not astronauts. So on April 16th, Mercury will go back into the sign of Aries. And so Mercury stationed direct in Pisces, where it's in its detriment and its fall, and now it's moving into Aries, where Mercury and Aries people are more blunt, more direct, and very to the point. Um, so this could be really great for people who have fire sign placements, air placements. You might have felt like Mercury in Pisces, you were kind of confused, your speech was foggy, or you just couldn't communicate the things that you wanted to in the way that you wanted to. I have my Mercury in Pisces. It's one of my favorite placements in my chart, actually, because it's a very intuitive placement. But yes, I have a multiple tabs open situation in my brain. So it takes a lot for me to just like even focus and sit down and do this, you know, because I'm pulling things from different places and I want to go off in tangents, but I'm like, focus, Laura, get to the point. So Mercury will go back into Aries. April 17th, Mercury in Aries will conjunct Neptune in Aries at 0 degrees. This is such an interesting conjunction because whenever planets come together, each planet gives off a signature, right? So Mercury is the planet of communication, of messages, of um, speaking, emailing, technology, even technology in the way of sending messages through technology. And Neptune is the planet of imagination, dreaming, but it can also be this fogginess. So on this day, it is a 0 degree point in a cardinal sign, which is a world point. So watch out for the news that happens on this day. A secret or disclosure can happen on this day, or fake news. They're trying to trick you and keep you distracted so that they're doing like something else over here. It's like very Trojan horse. The US media tends to do this a lot. They're like, "Ooh, look at this shiny thing." Meanwhile, they're bombing someplace in the Middle East, you know? So it has that world news potentiality, but you can't tell if it's true or not. This is also a great day if you want to use this day to announce something, but Neptunian in nature. So, Neptune, I think of film, I think of music. I would have picked this day for helping somebody announce like an album release or a movie release or something, or a startup, because Aries is the sign of the entrepreneur, the leader, the pioneer. This is going to be interesting. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens because I have a 0 degrees Aries sun. And anytime a planet ingresses into the sign of Aries, I get a really, really bad headache. Aries rules the head. So we shall see. But yeah, pay attention to the news, pay attention to the news that you get, check your emails, check your messages. Um, there could be like, sometimes I go into my spam folder in my email, and then there'll be all these emails from people that I just like didn't even know I got because it had moved to my spam folder. It's like something like that, something like hidden where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed that. So on April 18th, Mars will ingress back into the sign of Leo. Finally, this will take you back to December 2024. So we're retracing our steps back into Leo, but this will be much lighter, much more fiery, much more courageous. than when Mars was in Cancer. Mars has fallen in the sign of Cancer. So hopefully, with Mars entering Leo, more people will be bold enough to creatively express themselves. More people will be courageous to take to the streets or speak out or do something bold, using art as a form of resistance. These are all things that I'm praying to the collective. Okay, so April 19th, the sun will ingress into the sign of Taurus. And so happy solar return to all the Tauri, all you bulls out there, because we are then in Taurus season. And Mars in Leo will try Neptune in Aries for the first time in our lifetime. So Mars, again, in Leo is about being courageous, being expressive. It is, Leo is the sign of the actor, of the performer. And Neptune in Aries, I just mentioned that with my Neptune in Aries delineation. So in a trine that's a 120-degree angle, it's harmonious. I usually find during Mars activations, like when Mars triggers another planet, either through a trine, sextile, or a square or opposition, that's usually when you feel the energy to do something, to take action in some way. So just reflect back since like March 30th. It hasn't been that much time. It's been 2 weeks since Neptune has been in Aries. What has that story been for you? For me, since I am an Aries, Neptune has really been like, hey, maybe it's time to really go delusional. Like maybe everything that you thought wasn't possible is just a limitation of your mind. I love using Stephen Hand's quote. Robert Hand. Robert Hand is the astrologer. He says that Neptune is the planet of reality and Saturn is the illusion that there ever was. And I think about the American dream as a very Neptunian thing. So the USA Sibley chart has Neptune and Virgo in the 10th house. And the 10th house in anyone's chart is like what you visibly can see, right? Because it's the highest point of our chart. And Neptune and Virgo in the USA Sibley chart is the American dream, right? You come to this country, give us your poor, give us your tired. And if you just work hard, then you can achieve this level of success. Well, I think in late stage capitalism, a lot of people are starting to see that a lot of these billionaires and politicians are just sucking us dry and they've literally wrecked the middle class. So, and our tax dollars are being used to fund, they're used to be fund settler colonialism. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I have to laugh because it like dispels some of the trauma. um, so Neptune is reality, but also in the flip side, it could be something that is so made up, but people believe it to be real. So money, for example, I write about this in my book, How to Manifest, Not So Settle, plug there. Money is just a form of exchange, and through time, people used to exchange in a barter system, right? But in order to keep track of the barter system, they would exchange like grain, and then it became coins, and then it became gold for paper. And then somewhere along the line, they just kept printing the paper without it being backed by gold. This is like the US, right? So money in its reality is not backed by anything. It's just paper. But we give so much of our energetic dumpingness to it. Like we believe in it so much that it literally ruins people's lives. Meanwhile, we can say one day, oh, we're going to exchange crystals as a form of money, I'm going to give you 2 of my crystals for your astrology reading. It's sometimes it's so arbitrary, but people really believe in it. So that's Neptune. So hopefully with the sun going into Taurus and Mars trine Neptune in Aries, this is like, okay, we need to really start making moves. And I think by the middle of April, going into the end of April, because we're still applying to an opposition between Mars and Pluto the last time on April 26th, there are still things that we are kind of holding on to. You know, what this full moon in Libra felt like to me is people really needing to understand their values and the things that they're holding onto with like the last grip. It's like I need to believe in this so much because like if I don't, then my whole world will collapse, you know? So on April 20th is the third quarter moon in Aquarius because the next lunation will be the new moon in Taurus, which normally I love a good new moon in Taurus, but I will explain next week why this one is a little dicey. April 20th is a big day. Venus and Pisces will sextile Uranus and Taurus at 25 degrees. Mercury and Aries will sextile Pluto and Aquarius at 3 degrees. And the Sun in Taurus will square Mars in Leo at 1 degree. So it seems like with the quarter moon and the Sun in Taurus square Mars in Leo, there is a conflict point. So Taurus likes to be embodied. It likes to be still. It likes to hold on. It likes to be fixed, right? Earth. And then that Mars in Leo is like, we need to express. We need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to be seen, right? But Taurus is like, I want to be laying in the grass and feeling comfortable. And then the first quarter moon, so that's a T square, right? The moon in Aquarius is like, we need to make connections. We need to have some kind of awakening with the collective. We need to come together as a community. We need to have collective liberation, right? There's multiple squares happening that day. What I love about this day, though, are the sextiles. So we saw these sextiles when Venus and Mercury were both retrograde. So Venus in a sextile to Uranus is making a change that is based on your values. Venus is about beauty, love, relationships. It's exalted in the sign of Pisces. And Uranus is about like revelation, change, awakening, unexpectedness. So these two planets meeting at a harmonious exchange for the third and final time is like, okay, we really need to pivot. Same thing with Mercury and Aries, sextile Pluto and Aquarius. So Mercury in Aries is blunt, straightforward. Pluto in Aquarius is revealing of the abuse of powers, power dynamics. A lot of disclosures can happen on this day too, like unexpected news, right? Again, this is the third time. So yeah, watch out for April 20th. That's a Sunday. A lot of things can be moving. And yeah, I think this week, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, the biggest thing is the waning phase. So the moon is decreasing in light and we're starting to let go and shift. And we're going to now with planets moving forward. It's like when planets station, they still need time to have momentum to move forward, right? Like if you think about a Mack truck, it takes a long time for it to speed up and also slow down. So we need to, build up this momentum of change because Mars is such an important planet. Mars is our drive, our ability to take action, our ability to fucking change things, Yes, it is the planet of anger and a planet of war and conflict, but you need that ferociousness to change stuff in your life that you don't want anymore. I think people feel stagnant when they lack the courage or the agency, or they don't believe in themselves because there's self-doubt that they don't actually make the moves to move forward. And I heard somebody on TikTok say this, that it's better to fumble while you take actions than to not take action at all. And I really do believe that as an Aries. Like, you will fail. This is why I love being an Aries, because like you'll try things and yes, you'll fail, but you'll try again. It's like a trial and error kind of thing. And that is so much more beneficial to your learning than not taking any action at all, because at least you're learning in the process. And who fucking cares if you fail, are those people taking a chance? Are the people looking at you and saying, "What are you doing?" Are they putting their neck out on the line? Probably not. Only people who don't take that kind of risk are the ones laughing at you. And you don't need their opinion anyway. So it's still Aries season until April 19th. So just soaking in the last days of this fiery season. And as always, please stay safe. Please, I send you all the love and protection your way. And the easiest way you can support me is to like and subscribe, leave a comment so that more views can get on these videos, because I'm so grateful to be doing what I love to do. And see you next week. Bye.